and welcome to episode 5 of Squib Around the CFL. I'm your host, Riley Pollock, and we continue our journey east this week as we head to the home of the defending Grey Cup champions and chat Winnipeg Blue Bombers with Darren Bombing of TSN. He covers the Jets and the Bombers and is here to do maybe a little bit of both today. So without wasting any more time, let's get to Darren. And I know, Darren, that you're probably a little busy with the Jets beat right now, but thank you for taking time out of your day to chat some CFL with us.
Always got time to talk CFL. It's my first love, football, number one for me. But yeah, Jets is busy, but can always take some time to talk some ball.
Yeah, I bet it is, and we wait till Wednesday for round one, game one of the Jets and the Oilers. We can start with hockey. I mean, this is a CFL podcast,
sure,
but
yeah.
I do love talking hockey as well. How do you feel about this matchup with the Oilers? I know it didn't go great in the regular season, and they have the two best players on the planet. How are you feeling going into this one?
Well, I'll just start by stating the obvious. Connor McDavid is scary. He is a bad, bad man. If you're a Jets fan, you're afraid. If you're a hockey fan or an Oilers fan or anything outside of maybe being a Jets fan, you're scared in a good way because you never know what's going to happen when he's on the ice, when he has the puck. Frankly, even when he doesn't have the puck, he just seems to know exactly where to be and what to do to make everyone's eyes grow wide really quickly. When you got someone like him and then the number 2 scorer in the NHL in Leon Draisaitl, maybe they're on the same line, maybe they're not. I think that's almost Dave Tippett's, makes the tip of his spear silver-tipped because he can split them up. And then you got twice as much danger. You can put them together, and you think they're almost nearly unstoppable. The Winnipeg Jets have a lot of defensive problems, defensive lapses at times. I think they're maybe a little bit too offensively minded when they're not playing as sharp as they would like to. It helps when you have Connor Hellebuyck and the reigning Vezina Trophy winner, but I think this is going to be a heck of a series. A lot of people are picking Edmonton to win in 5, even 4 games I've seen from a lot of individuals that know what they're talking about. Maybe they're just trying to diversify their bracket for the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs here by saying, okay, let's pick a low series and go with Edmonton and Winnipeg, especially with the way the Oilers dominated the Jets throughout the regular season. But I think it's going to be a real fun series. I think Winnipeg has a fighting chance. I do cover the Winnipeg Jets objectively. I do my best to do that, even though, I'm a born and raised Winnipegger and talk and I'm very close with a lot of, tried and true Jets fans. It's going to be an uphill climb for the Winnipeg Jets. I think if they can play solid 200-foot hockey and Connor Hellebuyck can steal a couple games for them, I think they got a fighting chance. But boy, Edmonton looks dangerous right now, especially with the way Mike Smith looks reborn, at the age of 38. He looks like his 20-year-old self again.
Yeah, for sure. It's a scary thought, and I'm a Habs fan, so I have my team with an uphill battle in round 1 as well. So we'll see how that one goes, but I have faith. Moving on to the CFL and the Bombers, we had the CFL draft recently, and it was obviously a weird year. There's a lot of players that you couldn't watch if they were playing in the U Sports ranks, but most players got some reps in from the NCAA, and the Bombers drafted 3rd overall and took offensive lion Liam Dobson. And what can you tell us? Can you tell us a little bit about him? I'm seeing on the CFL website here that they have him listed from Maine. Did he play at Texas State as well? I thought I saw that listed, but I might have been wrong.
Yeah, he played at Maine the last couple years and is now transferring to Texas State. Okay. There's a couple Ontario guys, another friend of his, the name is escaping me right now, but they've both joined Texas State, and they will play at that level this coming season in 2021. So he's already down in Texas. He's already soaking in the heat and the sunshine and a little bit of the COVID restrictions easing a little bit there. The number one thing when it comes to Liam Dobson, if you've read or heard anything about him already, it's people echoing the sentiments of Blue Bombers assistant general manager Ted Gavaya, who described Dobson as a road grader. He's 340 pounds. He's weighed even more than that at times. There was a viral video of him dunking a basketball after weighing in at 344 pounds. At a gym, the camera kind of, pans from the scale to him dunking the basketball. Very athletic for, well above 320, 330 pounds, and extremely strong. Was really dominant at Maine, wanted to play at that next level, wanted to play in the FBS and that next, that top tier of NCAA football, and try to take a shot at the NFL. I respect the young man. He spoke eloquently about being drafted by Mike O'Shea and Kyle Walters and the Blue Bombers culture, looking forward to being a part of that. He definitely is cut from that Blue Bombers offensive line cloth of being extremely physical, playing on that edge, just kind of having that mentality to be dominant and push guys around and have that mean streak in him on the football field. But he wants to take a shot at the NFL. So 1 year of playing the top level of the NCAA, maybe not, a top tier school at Texas State, but definitely playing amongst the top competition in the NCAA, I think will help him. We'll see if he gets a little bit of interest in the NFL this coming year. But I think Winnipeg did their research, did their homework, as Kyle Walters and his crew always do, and they're confident that he has the Canadian Football League in his sights, whether it's in a year or two after being in the NFL or on a practice roster, or if he doesn't get that opportunity. But I think it's a heck of a draft pick. It was definitely a futures pick. There's a lot of strategy, Riley, that went into the 2021 CFL draft with no past season, and there's still being that crop of 2020 CFL players that have either signed or are ready to sign for this upcoming season. Fingers crossed it happens. That a lot of teams maybe at the upper end of the salary cap, and with teams not having that full room that they've had in years past, because teams are going to be kind of held to that salary floor for 2021. Drafting a player like Liam Dobson, drafting a player like defensive back Patrice Rene out of North Carolina. He'll go back to school as well. Those are smart moves to ensure you don't have to pay those hefty first round draft picks and draft contracts going into a year where you're already going to be a little bit hamstrung. So I think it was a good overall draft for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And, as Kyle Walters has said many times, you can't go wrong stocking the cupboard with high-end Canadian talent on the offensive line.
Yeah, for sure. And I wouldn't be from Regina, Saskatchewan if I didn't ask you about a couple of boys from the Rams that the Blue Bombers picked up in Robbie Lowe and Kyle Borsa. Borsa fast in his 40 time at his pro day, and Robbie Lowe's a great defensive back, linebacker, kind of hybrid, I think, at the next level, and played a little bit of both for the Rams as well. What do you know about these two, and do you think they factor into the plans right away, whether it be specials or something else, or do you think maybe they take another crack at Canada West for one more time?
Well, that's ultimately going to be up to, themselves as much as it is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We've seen it in the past. A great Canada West standout defensive lineman in Connor Griffiths out of UBC. After 1 year with after training camp with the Blue Bombers, they asked him, do you want to stay on the practice roster, or do you want to go back to youth sports and actually get on the field and play football games? And Griffiths decided to stay on the practice roster, remain a pro, and collect that practice roster paycheck. When it comes to Borsa and Lowe's and all of those youth sports players and the NCAA players as well, league-wide, it's going to be up to them and the team to find what works for them. I was fortunate enough, Riley, back in 2019 to travel to Regina twice for the Canada West Showcase broadcasts and do some sideline reporting and some game hosting for Rams games. And I got to see Robbie Lowe and Kyle Borsa up close, on a couple occasions. And I was really impressed with Robbie Lowe. I think he probably came into the draft a little bit underrated or under the radar, but great measurables at 6'1" and 205. He runs extremely well. He's a linebacker, but we got to remember he played strong side linebacker, so he was responsible for dropping into coverage, covering running backs coming out of the backfield quite a bit. Great special teams player, of course, for most mid-round and late-round Canadian draft picks. He's going to have to cut his teeth on special teams before stepping on the field for defensive snaps once the regular season gets going. But I think he's a great fit in the CFL in that where he measures up, 6'1", 205. If you're familiar with the Canadian linebackers the Blue Bombers have, they've got a lot of guys cut right like that, like Robbie Lowe. I think he could even probably be a safety in the future if they see him maybe dropping a little bit of weight or staying around 200 pounds. If he is mobile enough and smart enough, it's probably the most cerebral defensive back spot on the field. Maybe that's where Robbie Lowe fits, but he fits in with Jesse Briggs and Shane Gauthier and those Canadian linebackers the Blue Bombers already have. And you hit the nail on the head with Kyle Borsa, an absolute burner, especially as a Canadian youth sports player. He blew the socks off everybody at the combine in 2021. Ran an unbelievable 40 time that led everybody. And an interesting story with Kyle Borsa is that he got snagged with a performance-enhancing test positive during his youth sports career. Did not get to play in those games that I covered the Regina Rams back in 2019. So he's been away from football for a couple years, but he's one of these guys that loves football, is a total gym rat, and somebody that I think fits in really well with that Canadian running back crew the Bombers have. Obviously, Andrew Harris, Johnny Augustine, Brady Oliveira, Kyle Borsa fits right in there with them. Special teams, maybe even a kick returner, along with Nick Dembski for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That's something that Kyle Borsa could probably do. But when you start a Canadian running back, frankly, you start a Canadian anywhere, but especially running back, you want to make sure you have lots of depth behind them. I think it was a great draft pick in the 5th round, 39th overall for the Blue Bombers to take in Kyle Borsa. Just to put a cap on that positive drug test, all indications are that he simply made a mistake and took something, a legal supplement that maybe wasn't or definitely was not certified by the right governing bodies, and that it was probably something he did not do purposefully. That's what the Blue Bombers have stated. That's what Kyle Borsa has stated from day one. I expect him to have a clean and prosperous future if he's able to continue his career at the professional level.
Yeah, and it's so tough. You don't really have people telling you what you can and can't do so much in U sport level as you do in the CFL. And when you're a young guy, you're trying to work out, you're trying to recover, and sometimes there's just something that is legal but not legal in the eyes of the sport governing body. So I'm sure he has learned from that mistake and is ready to move on.
Absolutely. It was actually the substance that he was tested positive for was a brand new substance as far as being banned by a lot of governing sport bodies here in Canada, and obviously by youth sports. So he paid his time. Wasn't able to play that final year of youth sports, but in 2019, but in 2020. With all of those guys losing a year because of the pandemic and there being no youth sports season, he will be eligible to go back and play his 5th or now be his 6th and final year with the Regina Rams if he so chooses.
Scary prospect to have a 6th year with that guy, but we'll see which way he goes. Right? Yeah. Moving on to the Bombers' main roster, maybe just let us know where you think this team is at a position of strength, and maybe if there are any holes in the defending Grey Cup champions as you see on paper going into this year.
Yeah, I don't see any holes. I really do see the Blue Bombers and the Hamilton Tiger Cats as, well, Vegas has them as the 2 favorites and has the Ticats a little bit ahead of the Blue Bombers, and I'm not surprised with that at all. They've got 2 great quarterbacks, where Winnipeg has Zach Collaros and then a relatively unproven third-year player in Sean McGuire backing him up. So if you're going to give an edge to one team that are probably evenly matched, I understand why Vegas is giving the Ticats the best odds to win the 2021 Grey Cup. But Winnipeg has done such great work under Kyle Walters over the last 4 or 5 years where they don't have any glaring holes like they did, 4 or 5 years ago. There's definite areas where maybe they're not as deep as they would like to be, but very strong really from top to bottom. If you want to start on offense, receiver, a lot of stability there with the return of veteran Darvin Adams, capable of being a 1,000-yard receiver and maybe not getting his due of respect when it comes to a lot of those upper echelon receivers in the Canadian Football League. But I think you put in a real passing threat in Zach Collaros. Darvin Adams really blossomed, in his veteran ilk, in this Blue Bombers receiving corps. Rasheed Bailey nearly pulled in a highlight reel touchdown in the 107th Grey Cup. I think he's somebody that is going to be one of the better slot backs in the CFL in the years to come. Kenny Lawler, I think, has the ability to be the next Darvin Adams in the CFL. Long, vertically fast, strong route runner, smart, excellent hands. Like everything thrown in a catchable radius of Kenny Lawler, he seems to just have those sticky mitts and pull everything in. Then you got great Canadians as well in Nick Dembski and Drew Wolodarski. Some good Canadians behind them. A draft pick from 2020, Brendan O'Leary-Orange, 6'4", well over 200 pounds out of the University of Nevada. I'm curious to see what that level of physical talent can bring, on the CFL field. And then the kick returners that they have are definitely options, even though Lucky Whitehead and Canadian Daniel Peterson both departed for other teams in free agency. Charles Nelson missed all of 2019 due to injury, and Janarian Grant, who is probably one of the top kick returners in the CFL today. Those guys can play receiver as well, so I think the Blue Bombers are extremely strong in their pass catching. Running back, I already mentioned a lot of those names behind Andrew Harris, Johnny Augustine, Brady Oliveira, Kyle Borsa, if he's able to crack the roster. Mike Miller is an absolute killer on special teams, but we've seen his ability to play fullback, to catch passes out of the backfield as well. What I'm most curious about, though, is somebody like Andrew Harris, Riley, with the season he had, the way he finished it in 2019 by, coming home with all the accolades in the 107th Grey Cup. There's a lot of veterans in the CFL. Does this year away from football help somebody who's in their early to mid-30s and having a fresh body, allowing to really rest? Or does it hurt them because they step away from playing physical, meaningful football games for, it's going to be almost 2 years once they step on the field later this summer. So, I'm really curious to see how that happens. But, hey, Andrew Harris has led the league in rushing 3 seasons in a row. There's no reason to think that anything will drop there. I mentioned some of those quarterbacks, Collaros, Sean McGuire, and then, they got some rookies behind them in Dalton Sneed and Drew Brown. Quarterbacks, you never know what you got until they step on the field and start working with 12 players instead of their 11. The yard off the ball, the motion, all of that, it changes everything for a quarterback. But I really do believe Sean McGuire has the tools to be a good CFL quarterback, and maybe even a great one. Reminds me a lot of Mike Riley. And I don't say that lightly. I've done my homework on him. Maybe doesn't have the same throwing motion that Mike Riley has, but has that same arm strength, has the same vision, has the same leadership qualities, I'm told, in the huddle and in the meeting rooms and that sort of thing. I'm really curious to see, if he gets a chance to take some meaningful snaps, what he'll be able to do. And then just to cap off the offense, while that offensive line the Blue Bombers have, Stanley Bryant, Jamarcus Hardrick at tackle, Pat Neufeld, Michael Couture, Drew Desjardins, Tui Ellie, Jeff Gray, Chris Kolinkowski, lots of experience, lots of physicality, lots of size, and I think experience maybe being the most important with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That offensive line group looks as strong as it ever has been, and it's the reason they're the Grey Cup champions. That offensive line protected so well, opened things up for Andrew Harris, and allowed Zach Collaros to be a true passing threat through the playoffs, where opposing defenses didn't know how to handle the Blue Bombers, because if you came close to the line of scrimmage to contain Andrew Harris and limit him, they would go over the top and find those receivers. And if you dropped back, Andrew Harris was able to absolutely eat. So that offensive line is really the reason why I think they were as good as they were in 2019, and I think the offense looks extremely strong.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's not a whole lot to be scared about in terms of holes when it comes to the Blue Bombers this year. They look very good on paper, returning a large portion of that Grey Cup winning team. And let me tell you, I covered Hamilton the entire week of Grey Cup for Sportsnet 960, and they were, playing music during practice and seemed very confident. And I was like, oh, I don't know how a team beats these guys. They look very good. And then you just see the poise and the calmness from the Bombers pregame, and it was like, uh-oh, that this Hamilton team might be in trouble. And it seemed like right from the get-go, the Bombers just were not going to be denied. So that was a very fun experience, and I hope I get to do it again. Probably not in Hamilton for my Calgary-based radio station, but it was definitely very cool to see the Bombers and how poised they were and how good they played in that game. And yeah, I mean, barring, I guess the only scary part for this roster might be if Zach Collaros can play a full season injury-free, which hasn't happened lately, but like you say, they have maybe a quarterback waiting in the wings that might be able to take over Cody Fajardo style the last time that Collaros got hurt. So we'll have to see about that. But yeah, Winnipeg has to be near number one for almost everyone picking the way too early standings right now.
No, absolutely. I think that was extremely well stated by you about just that body language the Blue Bombers had going into that Grey Cup game. You're right. They were calm, they were poised, and really it just looked like, 50 Mike O'Shea's on the field when it came to putting in the work at practice. And then when they stepped on the field for game day, they were laser focused and you could see energy in them. You could see them getting jacked up when they needed to be, coming onto the field and that sort of thing. But they were so composed and so poised. I was sitting in the Football Reporters of Canada hospitality suite the night before the Grey Cup. And there's 25 football reporters from across the country, Riley, all sitting in a circle. We're having a couple beverages. And, one person said, okay, I want to take a poll of everybody in here. Who thinks the Blue Bombers can win tomorrow? And it was myself and one other person who stood up and said, I think the Blue Bombers can win. And, of course, you're going to get, some ribbing from your colleagues and saying, oh, you're from Winnipeg. Of course you're picking them. What I saw from the Blue Bombers through the playoffs, the way the defense allowed 14, 13, and 12 points in each of those playoff games, including the Grey Cup, and then the way Andrew Harris was playing, Zach Collaros, and that threat that I just talked about of run versus pass, and the way Paul LaPolice was masterful in his play calling and offensive design, I just thought there's no way this team is going to lose. It's cold. It's Calgary. It's going to be a hard-nosed football game. I know Hamilton is favored, but I just couldn't see Winnipeg losing that game. And on behalf of a lot of the fans that follow my work, I was happy for them that the Blue Bombers were able to end that 29-year drought. I'm happy. Very happy to no longer be talking about that drought as well, because I got kind of bored of it, since I started covering this team in 2011, just counting the years and adding them all up to 29.
Yeah, fair enough. Is there anyone maybe that we haven't mentioned on the Blue Bombers roster that's a new player to the team, a rookie, something like that might step up and play a big role for the team this year that maybe we haven't heard much of?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. We went through all the depth on offense. I'll quickly go through the defense, and I'll maybe make it an abridged version. Defensive line, when you got Willie Jefferson, it's going to be a good defensive line. But having returning players like Steven Richardson, Jake Thomas, Jackson Jeffcoat, Theodric Hansen, a phenomenal global player, and clearly the best global player in the CFL right now. You add an athletic, versatile player in Toby Antigua. That's a dangerous group right up front. Adam Bighill back with Kyrie Wilson, Jesse Briggs, Shane Gauthier, and another global draft pick in Les Malo. Very interesting linebacking core there. But as far as players that are new to the Blue Bombers or that might start making some noise in the 2021 season, I look at two. Josh Johnson, formerly of the Edmonton football team, and him signing with the Blue Bombers in the 2020 offseason. Didn't get a chance to play, obviously, but a veteran player who I think will stabilize a lot of that defensive back end for the Blue Bombers, especially after losing Winston Rose to the NFL this past year, and Marcus Sales as well. He's since signed with the BC Lions. So I like Josh Johnson, a nice addition there. But the one player I think that really flashed some great play in the Grey Cup, and if it wasn't for Harris and the drought and the dominant defense that the Blue Bombers showed in that game, it was Mike Jones. A second-year player, was on the Blue Bombers practice roster, if I'm not mistaken, in 2018. He really, emerged in 2019, locked down the corner, was all over the field in that Grey Cup game, making plays. I really like Mike Jones. I think he's going to prove to be one of the top cover corners in the CFL in the years to come, and maybe a player that not a lot of people have taken notice to. I watched that Grey Cup game again about a week ago, Riley, and I was just blown away with how well Mike Jones locked down that wide side of the field for the Blue Bombers. They threw away from Winston Rose and Marcus Sales, and Mike Jones was everywhere he needed to be, and was just an excellent player. You mix in Brandon Alexander, Mercy Maston, Nick Taylor, some great young players with experience in that versatile back end the Blue Bombers have under Richie Hall. And, they got great play up front, as I mentioned, with Willie Jefferson. Really strong group on the back end with those players that I mentioned. Again, I think the Blue Bombers defense might even be stronger than the offense going into 2021.
Yeah, for sure. You list a lot of good players there, and it's making me less and less enthusiastic about my way too early pick of the Saskatchewan Roughriders winning the division, but
the Riders have a really good team, and coaching staff that's stable under Craig Dickinson as well. You add Jason Moss to that mix.
Yeah.
Good gracious, you never know what's going to happen with the talent that Jeremy O'Day and even prior to him, Chris Jones have assembled there. You add in Jason Moss, boy, I'm as scared about the Saskatchewan Roughriders as anybody right now. They're going to push Winnipeg. I think Calgary's almost looking like the third best team in the West for the first time in a heck of a long time.
Well, if we just quickly go through that division, I think Edmonton's gotten a lot better this offseason. I think BC's gotten a lot better since the last time we've seen them. It's gonna be a crapshoot, I feel like, for that 2 through 5 spot. I think maybe BC is still favored to be in the 5 spot, but between Edmonton, Calgary, and Saskatchewan, I don't think there's a whole lot between them, with Winnipeg probably leaning towards the top.
Yeah, I just think, with the instability Edmonton has had, and I'm not just talking about their nickname, but just with their coaching staff, and a lot of changes on their roster as well, with Scott Milanovic, signing on to be their head coach, and now going back to the National Football League to be a quarterback's coach once again. I'm not going to blame anybody for taking that opportunity because he's, still able to work. But it leaves Edmonton in a really tough spot. I still feel BC has a lot of work to do, but getting Rick Campbell as their head coach, I think, was a boon for them. And I think they've got nowhere to go but up. I'm with Bo Levi Mitchell. With a year to rest to that throwing shoulder, John Huffnagel puts together extremely good football teams, and Dave Dickinson and his special team staff are always, extremely strong. I really do think it's going to be a 3-horse race with Calgary, Saskatchewan, and Winnipeg in the West this year. It's very similar to what we were saying in 2019, and sure enough, that's the way it shook out. The third-place team won the Grey Cup, and Saskatchewan finished with a better record than the Calgary Stampeders, so they got to host that West Final, and you look at the Calgary Stampeders and how much they struggled against Winnipeg even on home field in that West semifinal. It shows you how important it is to finish higher up in the standings.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, that West semifinal is the coldest I've ever been in my whole life, and I don't even cheer for particularly either team, so that's the commitment level to the CFL, I guess, but yeah, I couldn't feel my feet for a couple weeks after that one. Let's move on to maybe just a little bit of league talk. I just have one or two more for you here. We have a start date tentatively set. We have an early August start date they're aiming for with a mid-July training camp. How positive are you that they can hit those dates? And do you think we'll see fans in the stands right away, or do you think maybe they have to play a few weeks with empty stadiums?
Yeah, that's the multi-million-dollar question. If you're an owner or a board member on a CFL team, it's a multi-million-dollar question. You asked if I'm positive that this will happen. Well, there's being positive, and then there's having positivity. Nobody right now is positive of anything because, as you know, we've seen over the last 14 months, even longer, this global pandemic will throw a wrench and a curveball at you in a moment. And you never seem to know what's going to happen. So for the Canadian Football League, for its member clubs, Commissioner Randy Ambrosie has been extremely tight-lipped as far as revealing too much information. Just look at the talks they've had with the XFL. They haven't said anything.
Yeah.
They've, really left everybody wondering, what does this mean? What could happen? What are your plans? What are your contingencies? What are you guys thinking about? That's just talks about, a potential partnership with an American professional football entity. Right?
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to just playing your season, the thing that should be the rock of your existence as a league, we know just as little. Sure, they put out a schedule in December of, a regular, late May rookie camp, and then the beginning of training camp through June, and then we're going to get games going in June. And then as spring approached, they saw what, all the health officials from coast to coast in this country saw, and that's the inability for, really large-scale organized activities, bringing athletes in from every corner of the continent. And frankly, you look at the global players too, you're going to be bringing players from Japan, from Austria and Germany, from Sweden, from Mexico, from South America, from Australia. You're bringing players from everywhere, all to these 9 CFL cities in Canada. It adds a lot of difficulty in just planning all of that. So now they're looking at this shortened schedule, as you mentioned, an August 5th start and a December 12th Grey Cup in Hamilton. I think it's still an optimistic schedule. I don't know if they're going to be able to have fans in stands, especially in Ontario and Quebec, maybe in Western Canada a little bit sooner than Ontario and Quebec, just based on what those health officials in those provincial areas have said. BC is not optimistic of having fans in the stands, from their health officials come August. Either is Ontario and Quebec. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, still unknown at this point. What I feel the league needs to do, and I am nowhere near being an expert in this, Riley, but just from, gauging everything and watching from afar, through the last year and a bit, is you got to get on the field. You got to find ways to test. You got to find ways to vaccinate. Everybody in your organization, the players on the field, the training staff, the support staff, the coaching staff, and everybody that is in that close contact in the gyms, on the field, in the offices every day, so you can have a training camp. And then you can start thinking about having games. CFL training camps are notoriously short as it is.
Yeah.
Especially because it's been so long and there's going to be so many first-year players stepping on the field. I think they need to ensure that training camp is full, training camp is thorough, and then step on the field to start playing games. Maybe they don't have fans in the stands for those first few weeks, but get some games played, get some momentum rolling to see if you can make it work. The National Hockey League, the NBA, the NFL, especially the National Hockey League, people don't remember that when they started playing hockey and the regular season began in early January, 3 days prior to that was when they actually announced, okay, good to go, and got the green light from health officials and government officials. So the CFL is being criticized in a lot of ways for saying, we don't know what's going on. They've put out a schedule. They have their teams equipped and ready to go. Yes, finances are getting in the way where maybe that wasn't the case with other professional sports, that, their pockets are a lot deeper and they have, a lot more financial resources at their disposal. But the CFL maybe needs to be a little bit more transparent in what's going on a day-to-day basis. But as far as planning what they want to happen, they've done a pretty good job, in my opinion. So, I'm not praising them. I'm not overly criticizing them. I think they deserve their fair amount of criticism in helping, the population and the fan base, especially after there being no football last year, just to allow them to know what's going on. But that said, I think, August, September, maybe it's Labor Day by the time they're able to actually get fans in the stands. That's what teams need in order to just operate, pay their bills, keep the lights on, and pay their players. So I understand that. But, boy, I can't imagine what would happen to this league if they're unable to play football again in 2021. 2 seasons in a row. I just think it's too much of a hill to climb and too much of a financial burden on these 9 ownership groups and the league itself if they don't play in 2021. So fingers crossed, Riley. I'm with everybody else, hoping things come together. But, in a global pandemic, you just don't know until you get a little bit closer to it happening.
Yeah, for sure. And I like the breakdown of that. I agree with everything you said. It's going to be tough, but yeah, just fingers crossed. We got to keep hoping that eventually something happens. One more before you leave, and it's very important. Everyone before you in these around the CFL episodes has picked a West Division winner and an East Division winner and a Grey Cup champ. So I need it from you. Way too early predictions. Who do you got going to the Grey Cup and winning the Grey Cup this year?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I mentioned to you how I understand the Blue Bombers and the Rough Riders, the Blue Bombers and the Hamilton Tiger Cats being the Vegas favorites right now. I think those are popular choices. Yeah. I don't like always going the popular route. And again, I try to cover this league objectively. If there are Blue Bomber Nation listeners to your podcast, I know I'm going to hear it, but that's okay. That's okay. And that's fine. I'm going to pick a little bit off the board. I'm going to take the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the West, and I'm going to take the Montreal Alouettes in the East. The reason I'm doing that is because, at this point, we don't know what these teams are going to look like on the field. I think it's almost like you're starting a fresh league. Yeah, you can look at rosters, break down the depth charts like you and I did today for the Blue Bombers. You can look at quarterbacking. You can look at the coaching staff. I just think the Saskatchewan Roughriders have talent. They have a great coaching staff, and as I mentioned, extremely impressed with the addition of Jason Moss. You add him to Cody Fajardo, and maybe they want to add some help on the offensive line. I just think everything's kind of coming together for them, and I want to go off the board. I think Winnipeg is going to be in the mix. Calgary is going to be in the mix. I want to pick Winnipeg, but just for the sake of being interesting, I'm going to pick the Saskatchewan Roughriders in the West. When it comes to the Montreal Alouettes, I feel Kahari Jones can motivate his team, and Vernon Adams Jr. Is going to be fired up enough to move himself into that upper echelon of quarterbacks in the CFL. It's going to be a tough climb for them. They're going to be up against it in trying to compete with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I'm sure I'm going to regret it when I see how good the Hamilton Tiger Cats are in 2021. But again, at the sake of just not being boring and picking the same teams as everybody else, I'm going to go with Montreal in the East. And winning the Grey Cup, well, I'll go with Saskatchewan. I just think if you come out of the West, you definitely are probably going to be the better team on that Grey Cup Sunday in Hamilton.
Fair enough, and I love it. I could not be happier with that decision. That Thank you so much today, Darren. I absolutely loved this interview, and hopefully I can talk to you again once we get a little closer to the season.
Absolutely, Riley. I always have a blast talking CFL. It was really fun talking with you. Good to meet you, and don't ever hesitate to reach out. I got time for you anytime to talk some ball.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day. Have fun covering that Jets and Oilers series.
Yeah, it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. Take care, Riley.
All right, see ya. That was Darren Bombing of TSN in Winnipeg, covering all things Blue Bombers and Jets. A very informative interview, and he has made me even more worried about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers than I already was going into this CFL season. Well, that will do it for episode 5 of Squib Around the CFL. Next up, we head to Toronto to talk Argonauts and their group of big-name off-season signings. Don't forget to follow us at Squib Kick Radio on all the socials and subscribe to us on Apple Pods or Spotify. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.
I got you stuck off the realness. Think not the shit's too hot. Too hot. Too hot. Rock you in your face. Dab your brain with your nose bone. I'm a vampire walking on the surface of the sun.